Prime Minister, let's talk about Pacific regionalism.
Mm-hmm.
So the unity that once existed seems to have dissipated. The University of the South Pacific is in some disarray, and the Pacific Islands Forum is fractured. Has the Pacific Way in fact lost its way, and can it be recovered?
Mm-hmm. I think the Pacific Way won't lose its way. Certainly there are fractures. I think part of the way that the Pacific does its business, particularly at the leadership level, has been on the basis of talanoa, face-to-face, sitting down and meeting and talking and resolving things. This hasn't been possible for over a year. And the recent Pacific Island Leaders Forum meeting, which I attended, I was on one of our northern group islands in Puka Puka, zooming in to the meeting as everybody else was. So some of the issues around, you mentioned the fragmentation with the forum in particular, due to the appointment of our former Prime Minister to the post of Secretary General. I believe that if we hadn't met on a face-to-face basis over the period of days that we meet as forum leaders, I'm sure we wouldn't have got to the stage that we've got now. The process that was undertaken through a vote of members, of course, led to some extreme decisions made by the Micronesian countries, who held a firm viewpoint that there was a rotation policy that was in place. But from our side, we took our lead very clearly from the 2002 decision of the Pacific Island leaders that the appointment of the Secretary General should be on the basis of merit and the best person for the job at the time. When we came through this COVID, it was apparent that our organisation, the Pacific Islands Forum, would need someone with certain capabilities to be able to help our region get through this COVID situation. We nominated our former Prime Minister on the basis that this is a person who has strong relationship links with many of the other leaders. This is a person who was in charge of a country that was able to graduate, despite fairly limited circumstances, into high income status. A leader who's managed to keep very high standards in terms of our economic development. So it was our understanding that on this basis we would put forward the nomination of our Prime Minister. It appears that more than half of the leaders themselves felt that he was a viable candidate for this job, rather than rotating it around to somebody else. I believe, though, that the next steps forward are what has been proposed, a group of Pacific leaders with a representative from Polynesia, from Micronesia and from Melanesia, to sit together and see how we can address the issues raised by Micronesian leaders and look to bring them back into the fold. But there's no doubt that the value of being part of the forum far outweighs the losses that would be incurred by not being part of the forum. And I'm hopeful that all of our leaders will be able to see this and encourage the spirit of collaboration and cooperation that's been a hallmark of Pacific leadership for decades now. You spoke about the USP as well. For this, I expect this would be a political intervention required to resolve this issue. For ourselves, our country has developed our satellite campus of the USP in the Cook Islands to the extent where the vast bulk of our students attend that campus rather than the campus in Fiji. But the USP campus, or the USP, the university itself, is unique in being one of only 2 regional universities in the whole world. So it's a development that came out of our forum leaders from the 1960s. It's a institution that needs to be maintained for the benefit of the majority of our Pacific Island countries, who use the USP to lift the knowledge and educational standards of their populations. Because we cannot afford to let these sorts of institutions go to waste. The future for any of our Pacific Island countries depends on people who are educated. It depends on a knowledge economy which is growing. And the USP is in a position to provide that to many, many countries, to all of our countries across the Pacific, and to all of our students, potentially, who'd like to join the USP. So these are two critical issues that are come to test us in probably the most testing time that we can be in the middle of COVID. So while countries are trying to prevent COVID getting into them, while countries are looking at ways of how we're going to get our economy back up and running, we've got this issue of our regionalism under threat as well, that really we cannot afford the time to be dealing with these, but we have to. It's no choice for us as leaders. So I expect to be talking to quite a few more leaders over the coming months to look at solutions, how we bring our family back together again.